What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel Podcast. This is your host, Tom Tona. I'm here with Juliet. Jules, what's going on?
Hey guys, welcome back.
And we have a special guest today, Jules.
Oh my God, my favorite.
My
Awesome.
favorite too. Everybody's favorite. TonaLaw human resource rock star Alesha Nadeem. Alesha, what's going on?
Just enjoying life.
Awesome. This is the final episode 6 of the Human Resource for Law Firm series, and it's going to be themed around understanding advancement and or end of employment removal / termination in the workplace, right? So without further ado, let's get rolling. Alesha, really quick, we focus a lot on making sure we're doing these quarterly reviews, and then there's an annual look.
Yeah.
And a lot of times there is advancement opportunities, right? We try to give advancement opportunities to people at TonaLaw.
Mm-hmm.
So explain for everybody what career advancement is in your understanding.
So from my understanding, it's a process in which a professional, and it can be in any industry, they are achieving new career goals that help them have a more challenging job and just achieve more opportunities within their career.
Okay, let's touch on that for a second, because I shared with you guys recently, last couple of days, a speech by Nick Saban, the coach for a college football team. I think it's Alabama. I think he's retiring now or retired. But he talks about leadership of an organization, which he does or did, and talking about exactly what you're talking about, right? Finding out people's goals and how it ties into the overall goals of the organization. And we've always done that. And so I am excited to explore how we do that now. And everybody's got different goals too, right? I've talked about this with you guys. I've talked about it with other people in the firm. So what's essential to making sure that not only we offer career advancement, but then how do we assist with it?
The way we do it at TonaLaw is we get more clarity when we have our one-on-ones with the team and our annual reviews. We make sure we're discussing their goals and also making it clear of what the firm needs so that way we can better align both of them.
Awesome. And I know that a part of this, right, is financial. Everybody, especially if you live in Long Island, there's a financial component to it, right? Long Island's one of those. I didn't realize there's a moniker that's used online, HCOL and LCOL. I go onto these fishbowl forums, and now I got a new rabbit hole I go down, and it's like, now I'm going from LinkedIn to fishbowl to LinkedIn. I never know where I am anymore. But people ask, like, what's an appropriate salary for HCOL, high cost of living areas, like New York, like Long Island? Well, low cost of living areas, which I don't know any because I've never lived in one. Interestingly enough, we have multiple layers on the compensation scale that tie to financial advancement, right? That's one component of career advancement.
Correct.
Okay. And one of the things that we always try to do is we look at independent data sources in the marketplace to determine ranges that are actually published by us pretty publicly for each position and years of experience, right? We create these salary bands, and we always try to start out like at the higher levels, right? Towards the very end, and then move people up towards that, very high end of the level. But in addition to just financial incentive, what are the types of opportunities? And I'm really curious about this because you do a lot of the interviewing. What are the types of opportunities does a young, like Juliet, if Juliet was coming into the firm and we were trying to drill down on like, hey, where do you want to go career-wise? What are the types of opportunities that we give to team members?
So someone like a Juliet joining the firm, they're definitely interested in overall career advancement. They are looking to enhance their skills specifically within their department. So for someone like Jules, she would want to be part of an association that is specifically for marketing, and you can get even more in depth. And right now she's actually in the LMA. So that's the correct LMA.
Legal Marketing Association.
Legal. Yeah. So she's in legal marketing, in the Legal Marketing Association, which is specifically for law firms. Like it just gets even more niche, and it helps her be more solidified in her skills and thrive in her position.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I'm just realizing as we're talking about it, right? So both of you are at certain levels, right? Like Jules, you started as a marketing assistant. You're a marketing coordinator, legit. Like that is what you're doing. But then you've researched other levels of career advancement, right?
Yes.
So let's use you as an example. Job levels, that stuff you can find online now, where you say, what is a career path from marketing assistant to marketing director, right? You can actually find that online.
Yeah. And you could find like the specific amount of time that is required for each level. Like for instance, marketing coordinator is a little bit of a lengthier position. Like you need a lot more years of experience to go up to the next one. I think the next one is marketing manager, I believe.
Okay.
So it's interesting because at the firm, you definitely provide opportunities for someone like me to gain all of that learning experience as well as the hands-on experience in the day-to-day working as
in
a
the
marketing
trenches.
coordinator.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? So even with you, Alesha, right? Like you came in and one of your goals in your career, you told me, was to be an HR director, right?
Right.
So a firm of our size, 25 people, and we have whatever we have overseas, that wouldn't be in a firm of our size, right? You came in knowing, hey, I specialized in recruiting. The next step for you, you were very intentional about it, which is very impressive at your young age. That you were very intentional in your career design. I actually got to give you props for that because
Thank you.
No, I'm being serious. And same thing with Jules, right? Like I think Jules was different because we had such a built-in relationship over I mean, God, she's been with me. I don't even know how many years now. How many years, Jules?
Like going on to 5, I believe.
5 years, but from when she was a kid, right? I've known her family, whatever. But
yeah, I
like
was like 19.
Yeah. But like you came in and you were very purposeful. Like you knew, okay, I want to be an HR director. The next step for me is the job you're looking to hire for, HR generalist. And to be honest with you, I had no idea of any of this stuff. One of the themes we do with all of these shows is what I wish I knew 20 years ago when I opened a firm, right? So 20 years ago, I would have hired somebody like Jules and called her a marketing director. 20 years ago, I would have brought you in, Alesha, and said, you're a human resource director.
Yeah.
And other firm owners have made this mistake. So if anybody's listening to this, it's really important to be intentional with titles. Titles have meanings. Titles have job descriptions and salaries, where if I called somebody a director, that's a multi-six-figure job.
Yeah.
Right. And what I love is Jules did the research because I said, look, I don't know what the next steps are. Do them and let's talk. Let's go out to lunch. We'll talk. So she did the research and she said, oh, this is like a longer window, like she just talked about. So, and you did the same thing during your interview. You were like, this is what I need to learn. I know the skills I need to learn and I want to learn them here. And with you, because you're coming in, you're basically our only HR person. I said, look for outside organizations, right? One of the things I haven't been disciplined about is my budgeting on that. Like, I'm just like, yeah, look, you're a rock star, whatever you want, I say yes to. And then my accountant's like, dude, what do you do? The amount of money you're spending on education for team members, what if they leave? And I'm like, well, that's always a risk. You know, it happens. It's happened. But I don't know. I believe in people and maybe I'm too believing in people. So that I got to work on that. But when it comes to you, comes to Jules, everything that you learn increases in value, which brings more value to what you do here. Right. So I love that you guys were both intentional about it. Another component of career advancement, I think, is team member recognition.
Yeah.
Right. One thing that lawyers specifically are really bad at is telling people when they're doing things right. Lawyers are trained to look for mistakes. Lawyers are trained to look for errors, for mistakes, for negligence, all that stuff. So it's very rare in general in law firms that you hear, hey, by the way, great job, Alesha, on hiring. Hey, by the way, Jules, I couldn't do what I'm doing without you. Or you, Alesha, right? I think I told you both that in the last 2 days. I think team member recognition is important. And I read the stuff online. The clickbait online is unbelievable. Like you can't do anything right without somebody being like, oh, you bought pizza. Let's have a pizza party instead of giving us $10,000. It makes me nuts online. But Alesha, what are the ways that you as my head of HR engage in team member recognition and team appreciation?
Me specifically, as
just what you've been implementing and all of the things that you do, and Jules does, because Jules does it too, right? What are the things that we do just as team member recognition to say, hey, look, we love having you here. You're doing a great job. What do we do?
I know off the top of my head, one thing that Alesha and I kind of work together on is team member anniversaries. We love to celebrate people here. We love to celebrate milestones such as 1 year, 2 year, 3 year anniversaries. So for the women in the office, we will always get them flowers for their anniversary. Depending on how long somebody has been here, we will also maybe like bring in donuts or fruit or cupcakes or something that we know that team member likes. And then for the male team members, we get them cute little gifts. Like, for instance, one of our attorneys, his 1 year was a couple months ago, and Alesha and I got him this mug that says, "See you later, litigator." And it's got a little alligator on it.
I saw that.
So we try to do cute little personalized touches like that for anybody who's been here for a while, just because it makes them feel appreciated and seen. And, you know, it's no small feat being here for a year, 2 years, 3 years, just devoting your time to an organization. So we like to celebrate that.
And I also think it's important, like Alesha keeps us on point with that, right? Like Alesha, I was thinking about the other day and I was like, I could never function without Alesha in that seat or somebody just like Alesha in that seat, because it's so overwhelming the amount of stuff you have to do in a given day, right? Like, and I see it when Janira is out and you got to come to me on stuff, or Jen, like, whoo, you juggle a lot of stuff in that position, a lot of stuff. So let's shift gears, because I know we're going to try to keep this on a time schedule. One of the things that has always been part of any business is removal of team members. So let's call that what it is and be very specific. Termination. Yeah. What I want to get into, and it's really difficult in the beginning when you start a law firm, what I want to get into is how, why, and when.
Right.
So one, let's define this very clearly. Termination is when the company decides that for some reason that team member or team members is no longer going to be employed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is there any other definition that goes into that other than, like, we know if somebody resigns, it's a resignation, and that's also a form of ending the employment. And you've been in on certain terminations and since you've started, right? Most common reason that you would say that a company, other than financial downsizing, right? A company says, I'm getting rid of X because the numbers don't make sense anymore. And that happens. That's actually happening right now. And I think a lot of companies, I heard a story last night. I'll give you an example. A massive law firm hired hundreds and hundreds of paralegals across the country to file a certain amount of lawsuits by a certain date because of a law change. As soon as all those lawsuits were filed, they let everybody go. A lot of paralegals in play right now, which, you know, if you're hiring, great. You can hire remote, put them in positions. But from your perspective, is this one of the more challenging things for you?
To hire or remove?
No, removal, termination.
I'm going to be honest, no. The way we do it at TonaLaw, it's what's best for both parties. At the end of the day, we go through multiple steps to get to that point. It's not something that is done without thinking through and consulting with the managers or like even HR. So it's not something that's done off a whim. Like,
right, it's not done lightly.
We follow a proper process that's through EOS to make sure that we are covering all the bases and making sure that we can help the team member if there are any issues that we can correct in a timely manner.
Okay. So. And interestingly enough, they have a certain methodology. So the steps leading up to it are 3 different meetings and then follow-ups in writing, summarizing what's going on and what we need to see happening in the position, in the role, right? Maybe it's the wrong person in the right seat, or the right person in the wrong seat, or the worst case scenario, the wrong person in the wrong seat, right? Mm-hmm. And look, it's just part of business.
Right.
Here's what I struggled with. I love people. I really do. I can love somebody in my organization, but if they're not the right person in the right seat, then that's doing a disservice not only to the company, not only to the person and the team, it's doing a disservice just across the board, right? It does a disservice for the person. So when I asked you the most common reason, to me, tell me if you disagree, the most common reason why the decision gets made is typically non-alignment with our core values.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. And the interesting part about it is when I was younger, I used to get very emotional about that decision. And now I don't, right? Because it's just, if we're wrestling with an issue, it's typically resolved by resorting according to the core values? Is there alignment? Is the person the right person in the right seat? And if the answer is no, that doesn't mean they're a bad person, right? That doesn't mean that anything is off other than it's not a good fit. And they typically feel it. They know, right? That's what we've observed, right? So how do you know when it's time to say, look, we have to make this decision for termination? It's going to be their last day.
Yeah. So at TonaLaw, we go through, like I said, a multi-step process. At that point, there are multiple conversations that are had between the manager and the employee based on either their actions or their performance. Usually these conversations, they're always documented, and there's either meetings between the manager or myself that are held between the team member on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to make sure to see if there is improvement. And the event of a termination, it's usually because there are no improvements and we feel that there's not going to be any improvement at that point. So at that point, we terminate.
It could also be that GWC analysis, right? Because the right person is the person that aligns with the core values. The right seat means they get it. They want it. They have the capacity to do it. Remember, we went through that whole thing one other time. So it's a two-part analysis. Are they the right person? That means core value. In the right seat, do they get it, want it, capacity to do it? And it is very often that I'm like, hey, let's talk about your goals. Is this really what you want? And believe it or not, I've had people tell me no. So that's okay. That's okay, right? Not everybody wants exactly what that seat requires. So typically when we have the discussion, it's usually pretty brief, right? For anybody that's listening to this, it doesn't have to be something that's long and drawn out. When I was much younger, it always was, dude, it was like just this long drawn out conversation. And really it doesn't have to be anymore because the tools give everybody the indications all along, right? We're rolling out EOS formally, I think next week or the week after. And there's no surprises. The system's the system. And when we do those reviews, we've been doing those for a year now, right? And they're going according to here are our core values. And do you get it, want it, have the capacity to do it, right? We say we want to see more. Do you want more? I've had people say no, and that's fine. They're good where they are. Good, right? So that's not a termination at all. That's a good employee doing what a good employee wants to do. They get it. They have the capacity to do it, right? Their focus is on other stuff, right? Outside of work. It's typically those scenarios where there's not alignment with the core values or performance is really lacking below the bar, right? So the process we have, lay that out for us really quick.
So the removal process. So we normally we start with the people analyzer, which is two parts. It's the core value alignment and the right person, right seat assessment. And that's done by the leadership team. At that point, it's a unanimous decision that is made.
Right. And well, it's a vote, right? And in the past, it has to be unanimous is what you're saying in the vote. But in the past, like if we had one person who's like, look, I feel that we should be doing X, one more corrective conversation. Let's have a conversation. And we do that. Whether it works out or not, we let it as a team decide what's best for the organization, right? Here's the one caveat to all of this. And you've observed this over the last year that you've been there. You're coming up on your 1 year, right?
I am, yeah.
Toxicity. Oh, I just did a post.
Where did I do that?
On LinkedIn, Jules,
On LinkedIn.
believe it. Did a post on LinkedIn. I did 2 posts, one about bullying in the workplace and 2 about toxicity. Bullying is always toxic. Toxicity does not have to be bullying, right? But bullying is always toxic. So let's talk about one, workplace bullying. There are no corrective conversation. That's an immediate termination. You've seen that happen where typically somebody just is talking overly loud or overly aggressive. It's typically a male to a female. It's happened several times since you've been here, right? It doesn't happen a lot, but there's no corrective conversation to be had, right? There's just not. You have to draw the line at toxicity has to be eliminated, and it's typically got to be fast. So with termination, it should be mutual. Most of the time, everybody knows, right? Everybody knows something's off, and you have time to give that person to adjust, try to correct, etc. It was basically the exceptions to all of this. If you're a law firm owner listening to this, or any business owner, toxicity is immediate. I don't care if they put $2 million a year on the sheet. I don't care if they're your top financial performer. I have seen people that have kept those people on. And then what it does is it creates a toxic work culture and a toxic organization. So even though you might be doing great the years that person's there, eventually it's going to come to a halt, probably a crashing halt, because all your A players leave when toxicity is allowed to exist, right? And you've heard me come immediately to the defense of anybody that I hear being talked to inappropriately. As a client, potential client, I have fired clients over it. I have rejected potential clients with big cases because they've talked to people inappropriately on the phone. And unfortunately, I've had to have more than one or two terminations because of what I would deem toxicity, right? And Alesha, you've observed that. Now, I don't know if you guys have worked in other workplaces where they've let it slide. Have you, Alesha? Have you seen where toxicity was allowed to, listen, I know it's there. It's a little challenging, but we're going to look the other way for today.
No, I've been lucky enough to be in places where if there's any type of toxicity like that it gets handled in the proper and efficient way. So I think as time goes on, it happens, right? But we're in a new generation, especially with our generation, Jules, you and I think we speak up more for those things.
Yes and no. Listen, here's the thing. You guys are super sweet. Jules, how tall are you?
Why do we have to bring height into this?
How tall are you?
I'm 5'1".
You're a giant among women. Listen, I'm only 5'7". And now, Alesha, I know you're taller, but again, you guys are females. And so, listen, you're aware of the scenarios, right? Like, so there's a tendency if somebody starts yelling at a female that there's going to be some measure of intimidation. I don't care what their background is. I don't care what the training is, unless the female is a martial artist or has some kind of like, I'll punch you in the throat type of training, right? So the issue is, I will tell you that post I put up about bullying on LinkedIn got like 60,000 impressions and interactions. Intimidation through snide, very curt, hey, you should know better. Or it could even be this type of toxicity, sitting around a conference room table. And how many people are females in the organization? Again, it's more than half, right? Way more than half, actually.
I think at this point, like 80%.
Probably like 80%, ignoring all the females around the table. I'm paying all this money for all their opinions, and one person decides they're only going to talk to the men in the room. It's happened. It should not happen. That's a little more subtle, but it's still toxic. And when a superstar walks out of the room and is like, the guy's just totally ignoring me. How many times are you going to hear that if you're the owner of business? I think it's really important to set the tone and set the tone that you want for your organization. I value having the employees and the team that I have, and which means as the owner, you got to create a culture that protects that employee and team member contingency from that type of toxicity. So for me, I've just found it to be very easy. Zero tolerance for it. Ever. There are no exceptions. Have you seen one exception in the year you've been here?
Well, I have a question.
Well, 1 second. Hold that question for 1 second, Jules. Alesha, have you seen any exceptions to the toxicity rule since you've been here? How about you, Jules?
No exceptions.
Right. And now Alesha knows firsthand what I'm talking about. She's heard people try, and it's not assertive. There's a fine line, but it's not assertive. It borders on aggression, and you know it when it happens.
Right.
I know it when it happens because it's happened to me. So go ahead, Jules. What's your question since we're just riffing right now?
So I was going to ask, obviously you've been a law firm owner for over 20 years at this point, going on 23, I believe.
Yep.
In your 23 years, what do you think you struggled with the most when firing people in the past?
Okay. Hurting people. And I have that on the top of my head because I don't like to upset people. I don't like to hurt people. That's kind of odd coming from me, right? Because I'm a high conflict personality disc. I don't shy away from conflict or from combat situations. When I say combat, I mean like, any kind of conflict whatsoever. But I genuinely care to have a conversation with somebody. And that's why I do like the idea that there's corrective steps in place, because if somebody's repeatedly like, oh, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball. Oh, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball. Something's off, right? So for me, the hardest part of it is there's people on the other side. But what I learned over the years is you're not doing them any favor by not doing it. You have to take the steps. But the funny part of it is by doing it in a way where people understand, once you do the termination, you should always circulate an email that says, hey, so-and-so is no longer with the company and there are new endeavors going on that they want to go in, or they've made the decision for whatever, or it's just been mutual, right? A lot of times it's mutual, but you're basically letting everybody know. But typically everybody already knows also. That's the weird thing about it, where they're like, oh, we're going in a different direction. And it was very clear, right? So it removed a lot of the emotion. And also listening to Gary Vee talk about it was, look, you always want to try to train. You always want to try to course correct where you can. But where you can't, kind candor wins the day. That's one of our core values, which is I can't tell somebody doing a great job if they're not doing a great job.
Mhm.
And a lot of people do that. Like, hey, Joe, you're doing a good job. Hey, Joe, you're doing awesome. Hey, Joe, we got to let you go. What the fuck? If you're having meetings where you're like, hey, I'd really like to see more from you. This position calls for this type of execution, and we're not seeing it. So we want to give you 30, 60, 90 days. Get this stuff together. What do you want to do? Listen, I had one person who was like, they gave me notice after they found the new job. Okay. That's the way it was going to go anyway, right? That's the way it was going to go anyway. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Doesn't mean I'm a bad guy. It's just we needed something different. There wasn't alignment. So if I could give anybody anything that I've learned over the last 20 years is it gets easier because it's necessary. You do it when it's the best thing for the business after certain corrective measures have not worked, right?
Correct.
And again, you've had to do it, Alesha. Jules, I don't know if you had to do it with any of our overseas team.
Nope.
Where you were like, hey, we're not. You're fantastic at managing your overseas team. So kudos to you. I don't know how you even do it. So
Thanks. I love my girls.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. And they help us put this show together.
Yep.
So again, sum it up for us, Alesha, in terms of the way you view advancement and the way you view removals and termination.
So advancement is a betterment for everyone, for the firm and the employee. It's to create new goals and to achieve them and making sure it aligns with your goals in your career and personal goals too. There's a very good chance that all of it is connected. You know, having those conversations, doing one-on-ones, it's really important to have those with your team members because how else are you going to gain clarity if you're not having conversations with them? You know, get an understanding of what they want, get an understanding of what they need. Everyone's going to win in that situation. For removal, it's still, depending on how you look at it, it's still a win situation because it allows both sides of the party to get clarity on what they really need and want. It's never an easy process, but once you realize that it's just the betterment for both sides, it's a lot easier to handle that type of situation.
I agree with that, right? I do think that both advancement and offering opportunities for advancement are big. These are very important topics that not a lot of people talk about, and there's always a lot of questions about. When do I make a decision? When you're evaluating people quarterly and you use the KPIs to measure them, the decision becomes clear, right? And if you don't, you spend a lot of money that you shouldn't have spent for results you didn't want, right? So anything else to add? Either of you? Any other questions? Jules, you got anything? Alesha?
No, I think we summed up both the processes in a pretty simple manner. You have to plan these things out. You know, like you said, it's going to affect you financially if you don't take out the time to review these things and to sit with your team.
And put the work in, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things from that Nick Saban speech that I was referencing is his main job is not only meeting with the team members, 3 team members a day that aren't doing what he needs done, making sure he's meeting with the 3 team members that are, right? And that's something that is interesting. Like that's what his job is. That's how he views his job is bringing out the best in the team, giving them the opportunities, right? And showing them when there's non-alignment. He gave the example of a college football player who was going to be a first-round draft pick. He's walking by a fraternity house one night and he gets in a fight because they're calling him names and they're starting with him. So he goes in, he busts a couple of heads. Instead of calling the police, they called him. So he calls the guy into his office and he says, listen, what are you doing? And the guy starts to get all defensive. Then he said, so I decided a different tack because he wanted to beat me up. He said, what would have happened if they called the police instead of, hey, he said, you're going to go first round draft pick. That's a $23 million contract. Third round, because you get arrested, they don't like your character. Now it's a $3 million contract. And the lights went off because it was in sync with and in alignment. That conversation was in alignment between what's best for the team and what's best for that player. Is the $20 million worth it to beat somebody up? Or do you just keep walking and go, listen, man, I'm getting paid $23 million next year, right? So I love that speech. If I forget the name of it, Jules, you could put a link to it in the show notes. We'll wrap this up. I just want to say thanks, Alesha. You've been awesome again. You came up with all the frameworks for this with Jules. So Jules, thank you. Alesha, thank you.
Of course.
A lot of people have come up to me and said, look, I really found that valuable. And they were taking notes on it. Alesha, can they find you on LinkedIn if they have HR questions that they want to say, hey, listen, can you jump on a quick call or whatever? I know you're busy, but is the best way to reach you LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn or hr@TonaLaw.com.
Okay, so we'll put that in the show notes too. If anybody has any questions on law firm HR, you reach out to Alesha. She's awesome. And that's it. Thank you, ladies. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lead Counsel Podcast. This was the Law Firm HR installment 6 of the Law Firm HR series. And I hope you found it valuable. And listen wherever podcasts are distributed. And if you thought it was valuable, share it with some of your law firm owner friends. And we're out.
Yeah. And don't forget to give us a rating.
Yeah, rate. Give us a 5-star review. That would be awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.